Bennedict Mathurin has been killing it for the Pacers through 4 games. I want to talk about his numbers in the context of both the Pacers and NBA history. That's how good they are. They deserve a record book consideration. Plus, Pacers Bulls tonight, what to watch for in that game, and Madden's training camp underway. What you need to know about Fort Wayne as their season begins. We'll talk about it all today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and SI, and today we have a lot to get to, starting off with, of course, the talented future star-headed rookie Bennedict Mathurin and his numbers in the context of NBA history through 4 games, both in terms of the NBA and the league at large, and with the Pacers specifically, as he ranks very highly on both lists. I had a fun time doing some research on this, put an article up on si.com/NBA/Pacers. Go check it out if you want to. We'll talk about Ben Mathurin, of course, Pacers Bulls tonight, what to watch for in that game. Pacers looking for their first road win, and then at the end, the Madden season underway. Training camp has started. They made a first-round draft pick over the weekend in the G League draft, which actually is important. I'll explain why in that segment. You won't want to miss it. Lots to get to today. But let's lead with the story of the Pacers through most of their season now. Him or Tyrese Haliburton, whoever you prefer, Mr. Bennedict Mathurin, who's been just unbelievable for the Pacers so far to open this season. 89 points scored, shooting well from 3, getting to the free throw line, scoring from all over the court, fearless, and his confidence just never goes away. And I wanted to dive into the numbers of how well he's been doing through 4 games because, if you'll recall, on one of the podcasts I did before, I cited Nat Newell, the Indy Star sports editor, who had, through 3 games, Bennedict Mathurin had the Pacers franchise record for most points scored through 3 games by a Pacers rookie. So I wanted to track through 4 games and get my own numbers and tie it into the NBA just to show you how well he has started in the context of NBA history. We're not talking about Pacers history, although we will get to that. And 2 names you're going to hear on this show that you probably did not expect to hear when talking about Bennedict Mathurin will come up today. But let's start with NBA history. 89 total points through 4 games. That has been done 82 times in NBA history. Has a player or a rookie scored 70 points or more through 4 games, and Mathurin is now one of them. 25 times, 26 now because of Mathurin, has a rookie scored 89 or more points to open their season. So he is 25th all-time in points scored by a rookie through 4 games. He is tied with Jamal Mashburn. Very impressive. He would be 25th on his own, but Paolo Banchero actually has outscored him through 4 games. The Orlando Magic rookie has been playing very good. The only thing I would specify here is the way rookies are now and the way the NBA is now, where it's more talented, it's not as concentrated, things like that, is it's a little harder to be on that list this century or more recently. And in fact, the only guys ahead of, since the turn of the century in 2000, there are only 2 players who have scored more points as a rookie through 4 games than Bennedict Mathurin. And that is Paolo Banchero, who I already said, who is having an absolutely unbelievable rookie year and start of his own, and Kevin Durant, who is one of the best players in NBA history. So that's how impressive his start is in the history of the league. 25th, tied for 25th all time for all rookies ever in points through 4 games at 89. Extremely impressive at 22.5 points per game. Now let's talk about the second thing I think he's done pretty well. He hit 5 threes in their win. He's made 12 threes through his first 4 games, and this one's a little different because the NBA has changed and encouraged threes much more dramatically in the last decade or so, not even, than throughout league history. But through 4 games, there are only 5 rookies who have made at least 12 threes in their first 4 games. One of them is Bennedict Mathurin. Another Pacer, is Chris Duarte, who hit 13 threes last year in his first 4 games. The other ones, Trae Young, already an all-star, Jalen Green headed down the path, and Lauri Markkanen, who is an electric offensive player, who, by the way, catch the Jazz. Lauri Markkanen looks awesome for Utah. But either way, one of the first 5 ever rookies to shoot that well in NBA history, Bennedict Mathurin is. Now, free throws have always been a thing, and Mathurin became exactly the 100th rookie in NBA history on Monday night to attempt 19 or more free throw attempts in their first 4 games. Now, Paolo Banchero also hit that mark on Monday night. So technically there's 101 rookies who have done this now. I don't know who got it first in terms of chronologically. I'm not going to go back and look at like 7:52 p.m. or whatever, but you can call him the 100th. I don't think anyone will care. Bennedict Mathurin, the 100th rookie ever to do that as well. So even in league history, we're talking about one of the best 100 rookies ever through 4 games. Now, there's a lot more to it than just scoring. There's defense, there's game control, there's all this other stuff, and I don't want to totally overhype this, but Bennedict Mathurin's start statistically in terms of the league is completely ridiculous, right? He's doing an unbelievable job, and I thought it was amazing that Chris Duarte's name was also here because he also started strong, which I think is important context, right? Don't get too ahead of yourself thinking about how good Mathurin can be. That said, his numbers are very encouraging, and his total point output is much higher than that of Duarte's last year. Not much higher, but it is higher than Duarte's was last year. Now let's talk about it from the Pacers perspective, because he's already setting the Pacers records, as I referenced with Nat Newell earlier, and of course said myself. But through 4 games, here are all the Pacers rookies who had more than 50 points. Right, Mathurin's at 89. Through 4 games, here's every Pacers rookie ever with more than 50 points. Bennedict Mathurin, Chris Duarte, Clark Kellogg, whose name you're going to hear a ton today, Clark Kellogg, Reggie Miller, and the Rifleman. That's it. That is the entire crew. Some of the best Pacers ever, right? Early 80s Clark Kellogg was incredible before his career ended up only being short and derailed by injuries, but incredible in the early 80s. Mid 80s, you had Chuck Person, then Reggie, who obviously is the face of the franchise throughout time, and then Duarte and Mathurin, who in the last 2 years have sort of taken the reins on some of these rookie scoring records, thanks to Duarte's hot start. That obviously didn't sustain. He only played 55 games, but his start was extremely impressive and something the Pacers will forever remember. And now Mathurin is approaching that group as well. Reggie had 99 points through 6 games, right? 2 more games it took him to get to 99. So if Mathurin scores 11 points in the next 2 games, he'll remain ahead of Reggie Miller's pace. Now we'll talk about the actual full record at the end of this segment, because I don't think Mathurin's going to set the rookie points record. You'll see why at the end. But right now, he is ahead of everyone else. Now, through 4 games, here are all the Pacers rookies ever with more threes made than Bennedict Mathurin. The list is just Chris Duarte at 13. Last year, he's at 12. Mathurin is right now. He can keep pace with Duarte if he continues to shoot well. And then here comes a name you definitely did not expect to hear today. Through 4 games, only 2 Pacers rookies ever have taken 19 or more free throws. One is Bennedict Mathurin right now, right this season. The other one, and the Pacers franchise record holder for free throw attempts through 4 games, aka a guy who's finding crevices on the court and forcing defenses to foul him to stop him. Right? Mathurin's done an awesome job getting to the rim, driving at veteran players, exploding through contact and not trying to throw the ball over it or pass out of it, and getting to the line. Super impressive. Super rare that rookies are this good. In fact, remember, Mathurin's second in Pacers rookie history in this stat. The guy ahead of him, Tyler Hainsborough, Psycho T, had 20 free throw attempts in his first 4 games. Maybe this stat doesn't mean as much, but he had 10 free throw attempts in his first NBA game that he played, and he was injured for his first, I think, 6 games, and then 8 in his second game, and then only 2 total over the next 2 games because he started so well. Tyler Hainsborough is that record holder. So, obviously, all this suggests that Bennedict Mathurin, scoring from deep, getting to the line, in general, scoring very well. He did it in preseason as well, right? He had 79 points in the preseason. The next highest Pacer was 46, right? No one else even got to 50. He is clearly a talented scorer. Now, he'll at some point, hit a rookie wall. He might get injured. His role might change as the season goes on, and if he starts, maybe that's fine because he's growing chemistry with other good Pacers, but that means he won't be getting as many shot attempts because he'll play with guys who also need shots, right? So there are a lot of ways that his current pace could change, but right now, not only is he doing well in the Pacers history books, in fact, he's ahead of everybody in terms of just scoring, but he's in the top 25 in NBA history. He's done extremely well to start his career in a ton of key stats that reflect how well he's playing on offense. The Pacers record through 10 games is 179 points. That is by Clark Kellogg as well. 90 needed for Mathurin to hit that through 10 games, which seems a little more substantial than just 4. So if he averages 15 per game for the Pacers' next 6 games and then scores 1 more point than that, just 1 at any point, so 15.05 or something, he will have the record through 10 games, which is a little more significant than 4, which could just be a hot streak. But that is the mark to beat. Now, here's where the tricky part is. The full season record for the Pacers for points by a rookie, Clark Kellogg, dominant, early 80s, right? He averaged 20.1 points per game as a rookie. Mathurin is currently ahead of that, right? 48% shooting on 17.5 shots per game for Clark Kellogg back then. He scored 1,625 points. If you play all 82 games, that's 19.8 points per game. That is possible, right? Mathurin's above that now, and he looks like he's on that pace. But that seems unlikely to me just given how high that number is. Like if a rookie wall comes at all, Mathurin might not hit that high. Chuck Person is second at 1,541, right? That was a little bit lower of an average, somewhere closer to 18.5 points per game. A little higher than that number I just said, a little closer to 19 than 18.5. But either way, that seems more reasonable that he can get into the top 3. But catching Clark Kellogg's rookie season record in the 80s when the Pacers were terrible, in the early 80s, I should say, and needed him to play well, seems unlikely. It's possible, though. Health will be a big factor. If he can play in every game, he's got a shot to do it. So Mathurin's place in Pacer history looking great through 4 games. We'll see how it translates going forward through future contests. But I really thought those numbers were impressive. You can read more about them. Contextualize over at, again, si.com/NBA/Pacers. Let's talk about the Bulls, who the Pacers played tonight. A very, very interesting team, and kind of like a mini version of the challenge the Pacers just faced. I will explain why in just a second. Before we do that, though, I want to talk to you guys about LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every potential new hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. You can easily hop right on LinkedIn Jobs, post your job right up there. You put a little hashtag on it. It gets this nice purple frame around it. You put hashtag hiring on there so people can see it easily. It's a really simple process on the biggest business social network out there. You add your job, you get that purple hiring frame on there, it spreads the word, and they have a bunch of simple tools that can help you in the hiring process, like screening questions that make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. Super easy to do, super easy to hop on there, and that's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering high-quality hires versus leading competitors, because it's easy and the best candidates are there looking for work. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to and faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Pacers your first listen today and every single day. For your second listen, you can't ignore them. The New Orleans Pelicans just beat the Mavs without Zion and without Brandon Ingram. Holy moly, the Pelicans look awesome to start the season. Jake Madison of Locked On Pels is the way to go to hear more about the Pelicans. Let's talk about the Pacers, though, and their game tonight, their second road game of the season in Chicago against the Bulls. This one's going to be very interesting. It's like a mini version of the challenge that the Pacers just faced, where they're stars, but not as good as Harden and Embiid, but they're stars on the inside and stars on the outside, with DeRozan, who's killing it this year, Levine, who is not quite fully healthy, but is still very good, and Vucevic, who's taken a step forward from last year. So the Bulls are a really interesting team, right? They get to the line a lot, and they don't turn the ball over. That is a good recipe for general long-term success that can sustain you against any opponent. That said, they have very much played down to the level of their competition in every game. They just beat the Celtics 2 nights ago, and they were down 19 in the first quarter, and then they won the game by 18. They figured it out as the game went on. But just before that, they got smoked by Cleveland, and they lost to the Wizards, right? And then they beat Miami to open the season. On the road, right there, they've been all over the map with their results, where they're beating these teams that are really good and losing against teams that you'd think they're kind of above or in the same tier as. So they are, and they were like this last year, a team that kind of gets down to the level of their competition. They struggled with the higher level opponents, but found a way to, outduel some of these lower level teams. So the Pacers will, in theory, have a shot against this Bulls team, but they are more talented. DeRozan is unbelievable. Levine is good. Vucevic is good. They have other talented players, so this will be tricky. And I think that's why this will be hard. It's like a light version of Philly, where obviously Harden and Embiid are, again, on another level, but they're so tricky to guard, and they're still, the way the Sixers played, they can keep one of those guys out there with the second unit. The Bulls can do that too. Now, again, none of those guys are individually as hard as what they played, except maybe DeRozan, but the Pacers can do better, but it'll still be tricky with whoever's out there going against the Pacers' second unit. It's going to be very important for Nesmith and Duarte, whoever's with the second unit at the time, to do well guarding the stud perimeter players, because DeRozan is playing the 3 or the 4 a lot when he's out there right now. He's averaging 27 a game. I mean, he's just so ridiculous, even at this stage of his career. 40% from deep this year, by the way. Only 2 for 5. But if he's making a 3 every game, all of a sudden you got to think about it when he's behind the line. I mean, he just continues to add to his game and get better, even into his 30s. I love seeing that from DeMar, who got dumped on for the wrong reasons early in his career, and still over 50% from 3 to 10 feet and 10 to 16 feet and 16 feet to the three-point line. Such a tough cover. Pacers will have a ton of work to do with him. And oh, by the way, Nikola Vucevic has found his form after kind of a down year last year. And I think the Locked On Bulls guys have done a good job talking about this. He went from number 1 alpha dog in Orlando to kind of bottom of the food chain. Not bottom, but like 3rd or 4th option with the Bulls. Like, that's a hard adjustment. This year, right, he's figured out how to get his shots, where to get his shots from, right? So even though he's shooting a little worse from the field, he's doing much better on the glass, much better on the glass, scoring better, doing well around the rim, right? Being a little more Vucevic-like, even though even though he can't be the same option that he was with Orlando. So Jalen Smith, Isaiah Jackson, if Miles Turner's able to go, he is in fact questionable for this game, upgraded from the out designation. If Turner's able to go, and Turner's done well against Vucevic in the past, one of the best centers for him to go against because he can stretch him out a bit and he's not as quick. But Vucevic has been killing this year. He'll be tricky. And then, of course, they have Zach LaVine, all-star last year, super duper talented. He's only played in 2 games. He's still coming back from an injury from last year and isn't quite 100%, but is still super duper talented. 21 points per game, 45% from deep, 44% from the field. He's so hard to guard. He's so shifty, and now he can shoot. So Nesmith and Duarte will be super key in this game because of DeRozan and LaVine. Slowing them down, or at least making it hard for them, is really important because the Bulls have other good players, like I just talked about with Vucevic being a star-light kind of guy, but none of the rest of their guys are like star-level creators or even good creators. Dragic is okay, and he's done well for this Bulls team. Credit to them for getting him in there. He's nearing 5 assists per game. But Patrick Williams can't really create. Kobe White's limited to self-creation. Ayo Dosunmu can't really create. Caruso is as a creator. You know, they don't have a ton of good shot creation outside of the star. So if you can make their life uncomfortable, and Nesmith has talked about when to take on the challenge of the best players every night, that could be critical for the Pacers. If they can slow down even just one of those guys, that could go a long way in helping them win. Because on the flip side of the ball, it seems like they'd have an advantage with Haliburton, but Ayo, shout out to James Boyd for listening from U of I, is killer on defense, right? That's where his bread and butter is for this Bulls team, and he's talented as a passer and floor general. He's playing the 2nd most minutes per game for the Bulls for a reason. Some of that reason is that Lonzo's out, but some of it's that he's good, right? He's actually shooting the ball well this year as well. 13 points per game, 3 assists. He's a really good defender, though. He can make Hallie's life really hard. Haliburton will have to use his screens well, see his teammates well. It might take him a second to feel out where he can get his advantage in this game. Would not surprise me if he started slow. And so all this to say, a lot of talking about the Bulls and discussion about what this game could look like. Bennedict Mathurin, who we just talked about at the beginning, is really important, right? There's not a good defensive matchup Chicago has to put on him, especially if he's out there with Tyrese Haliburton. Dosunmu can only guard one of those 2 guys. They have some forward-ish hybrids, Derek Jones Jr., Patrick Williams, who are okay defenders, but not necessarily at the guard spots. Maybe Dalen Terry, who was teammates with Mathurin at Arizona, will play a little bit just for the spirit of it, but they don't have good defenders for both in the backcourt at the same time without Lonzo. So that Mathurin's really key in this game, especially when not guarded by Ayo against a weaker Bulls bench in general. Going to be pretty important for him to do well. And Chicago's got some real fours. Javonte Green, Patrick Williams, like I just said, Derek Jones Jr. kind of. So the matchup's tough for even guys like Jalen Smith, who's got to make them move and crowd them. So the big 3 for me in success in this game is going to be DeMar DeRozan's defender at all times. If that's Nesmith, if that's Duarte, whoever, if they can have a good game making him uncomfortable, even if he goes off like he did in Indy last year when he hit the one-legged game winner, that's the most important player. Mathurin second most for the bench scoring and in general offense he can provide. And then whoever at the 4 can get an advantage over Javonte Green or Patrick Williams. So I'll say Jalen Smith. But if someone else can step up, Pacers got a shot to win, right? Andrew Nembhard could be a tricky matchup in this game as a bigger guard against the Bulls guards. For example, Isaiah Jackson. No one is athletic as him on Chicago on the inside. Excuse me if you can hear the rain. It's raining very hard. There's some tricky matchups the Pacers can have, but it's from players who are either young or sort of inconsistent in general, so it'll be hard for the Pacers to exploit them, but they can. So Bulls are good. I think they have a lot of tactical advantages over the Pacers and talent advantages, but the Pacers can find their own ways to create points, to get stops, and to make this game go in their favor. We'll see what happens. I think that the Bulls in general play to the level of their competition in a way that makes me think the Pacers can be in this game, but I would not pick the Pacers to win. We'll see, though. They did well in the second half in Philly and sort of figured out what went wrong for them early, and that game was different than a lot of their losses in that they struggled more on offense than defense. So we'll see how this game goes. I am really looking forward to it. Hey, one more thing to talk about on today's Locked On Pacers. The Mad Ants, the G League affiliate for the Pacers, has begun. A lot of people don't really follow the Mad Ants as close as the Pacers, but I think they're still really important. I mean, last year, like 6, I think, Mad Ants suited up for the Pacers last year. A couple of them still on the roster now, right? Those guys are important. Tracking who's doing well, hearing the names is important. So their training camp just started Monday. They had the G League draft over the weekend. I want to catch you up on everything going on up in Fort Wayne. Before we do that, though, let me talk to you guys about BetOnline.net, your number one source for betting football and the start of the new basketball season. You can find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth analysis on every game over at BetOnline. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information with live betting, up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there, and more. If you're interested in betting on the Colts this weekend, which, at this point, it's scary. They're favored by 3 against the Commanders in Indy this weekend. Sam Ehlinger versus Taylor Heinicke, I believe how that's pronounced. I've only read it. I've never said it. If you're interested in that, you can get that line over at BetOnline. That game has so much volatility, it seems like, with 2 new quarterbacks. But we'll see. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events. BetOnline.net has MLB, Go Phillies in the World Series, MMA, boxing, golf, of course, NBA, NFL. Head over to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more, because BetOnline is where the game starts. Let's also really quickly talk about Acre Pro. When it comes to land sales, it pays to have experts in your corner. Acre Pro Midwest Farm Group are your local farmland specialists. With decades of experience in Indiana agriculture, no one knows the market better. Whether you're doing a 1031 exchange, expanding your operation, or selling a row crop farm, your local Acre Pro agent will walk the land with you and ensure a deal's done right. Great service is just the beginning. Acre Pro provides unparalleled land data, including soil ratings, elevation, flood zones, and land valuation across parcels, so that you get the full picture up front and can be confident in the entire land market. Your agent will cater to each of your individual needs and help you navigate the complexities of buying and selling land, so the process is made simple. Experience the ease of Acre Pro by working with farmland specialists like Kyle Rule, Brady Hammond, Neil Herr, and Kyle Spray. Visit acrepro.com or call 765-587-3185 and talk to your local land experts today. Again, that's 765-587-3185 or acrepro.com. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Pacers your first listen today and every single day. We just talked about the Bulls, so your second listen should be Locked On Bulls. Those guys kill it talking about that Chicago team, and they encompass what they consider to be the vibe of the Chicago sports fan. And I like the work that they do over at Locked On Bulls. Go check it out ahead of this game. Hey, let's talk about the Mad Ants, though, really quickly, who are starting training camp this week and had the G League draft over the weekend. I want to catch you up on everything going on with the Bulls with the Mad Ants, still thinking about the Bulls, heading into their season. Their first game is November 5th up in Fort Wayne if you want to check them out. But camp just opened this week. Let's start with the G League draft, though. They just drafted Abu Kigab, who went to Boise State last year, played for the Raptors in Summer League, averaged 7.5 points per game for Toronto in 2 games. He's pretty good on defense. He's really nosy for the ball as a rebounder. Those are the 2 skills he tries to highlight in every game. That's why they picked him, right? And they are cornering the market for Canadians. The Pacers are between the Pro Club and the Mad Ants. Another wing-sized guy, averaged like 15 points per game at Boise State his 5th year. He's 23 already, but seems to be a really talented player. So why should you care about who the Mad Ants draft, in the G League draft? Well, let me tell you why. You know who the Mad Ants drafted in the first round of the G League draft last year? Gabe York, who ended up receiving a 10-day with the Orlando Magic that fell through because of COVID complications, and then signing an actual 2-way with the Pacers to close the season. So they drafted an NBA talent, right? He played in games for the Pacers. He's back with the Mad Ants this year. Great pick. The year before, they drafted O'Shea Brissett in the first round, who was also an NBA talent and has been with the Pacers ever since, obviously. And they drafted, for example, a couple years ago, Walt Lemon Jr. in the first round, who had 2 years of NBA experience, played in a preseason for the Pacers, almost made the roster, right? These guys, the best G League draft picks, are generally NBA-level players. Sam Merrill went first overall. He's a 2-year NBA pro. Joe Wieskamp went second overall. He was a second-round pick 2 years ago, right? There's good talent in the top of the G League draft. Pacers get Kigab at 13. Right, he's a guy to watch out for. If he has a good year, don't keep an eye on him as a guy who could be promoted up to the Pacers roster as the season goes on, like York, like Brissett in years before. So let's talk about the Mad Ants. They have wings. They're like the anti-Pacers almost in roster construction, right? Thinking about some of the guys that I've seen around for the Mad Ants that are listed on their training camp roster, for example, David Acervitas, who played in preseason for the Pacers, Justin Anderson, who played in 13 games for the Pacers last year, Tevin Brown, a good shooter who played for Pacers in Summer League, Jermaine Samuels, same profile, right? Trevelin Queen is kind of a wing, he's more of a guard, and Kendall Brown for sure, the two-way guys for the Pacers, who they're still with the Pacers right now, by the way. I think they're on the road trip, even though the Mad Ants camp has started. Kigab, who they drafted first overall, and then two other players, Chris Coffey, a returning player from last year, as well as Pedro Bradshaw, right? So they have a ton of wings on this team, guys who, think about the Pacers roster. They're only an injury or two away from needing help on the wing desperately, like they were when Duarte got hurt last year. And they needed Justin Anderson very badly. They were playing Lance Stevenson at the 3, right? Having all these wings who have a chance to play well and potentially earn a roster spot with the Pacers seems like a good bit of business by Fort Wayne and by the Pacers to do this way. Now, they still have other talented players on the roster. Ton of ex-NBA talent up on that team. I put 7.5 ex-NBA guys. Beyond the guys I already named, Norvell Pell, who's been with a couple NBA teams, the Jazz, the Nets, and the 76ers. I hope I didn't forget any. He'll probably be their starter at center. David Stockton, who's played for the Jazz and the Kings, son of John Stockton, obviously. He'll probably start at point guard or one of the guard spots. And Gabe York, of course, who's on the Pacers last year. And then Benny Boatwright is the half. He had played in 2 different preseasons with the Memphis Grizzlies. So that obviously includes Kendall Brown, Trevelin Queen, Anderson, and Servitas as well. But that's a ton of NBA talent, right? They're a pretty good team. So to keep an eye on their cuts in the next week or so, they've got camp leading up, and they've got to cut 5 guys. They have 12 guys who encompass. This is a group of 12 for the Mad Ants, just to zoom out really far. Either signed an Exhibit 10 with the Pacers, were drafted in the G League draft, or are on a 2-way deal. Thinking of it that way, it seems like those would be the 12, and the cuts would be 5 of their returning players from last year, but there could be some surprises depending on how camp goes, or if someone signs an overseas deal, for example. It's never as straightforward as it seems, but they have 12 who make the most sense. So if they do anything noteworthy, of course, with cuts and things like that, I'll let you guys know. But my guess would be the 12 guys who either signed with the Pacers on an Exhibit 10 deal or played for the Pacers in Summer League, or just got drafted by the team in the G League draft. Tom Hankins, still the Mad Ants head coach going into year 3, I believe, of that experience. He's an assistant coach for the Pacers, lasting through the Bjorkgren era. He's one of the few guys who was on both staffs. The Mad Ants do a good job of running the same sort of style and stuff as the Pacers, so that when emergency players are needed, they know the schemes, they know the terminology, they're ready to go. Hankins does a good job doing all that stuff, and I think him being an assistant with the Pacers is pretty valuable in that way. Reminder of why you should also, as a Pacers fan listening, care about the Mad Ants. Here are the guys who got promoted just last season, who played for Fort Wayne and then moved up to the Pacers. Kiefer Sykes, Terry Taylor, Justin Anderson, Dwayne Washington, sort of. He was on a 2-way. Gabe York, and Nate Hinton. That's 6 guys who got promotions and were needed for the Pacers last year. Mad Ants do a pretty good job of this. Now, Nate Hinton was 2-way at the end of the year, same with Gabe York. So those are only kind of ones. Hinton was an emergency Exhibit 10 during the COVID portion of the season in January. But the other 4 guys, significant parts of the Pacers season. They should be less needed this year, but you have to imagine, given the Pacers' history, I think every year since I've been covering them, at least one Mad Ant has gotten a 10-day or some sort of call-up to the pro club. It would not surprise me to see that again. So keep all the best players in mind, track their best stats. I'll do my best to keep you informed on that. But it seems like if they were in camp or they just got drafted in the G League draft, they'll have a good shot to be that guy. Each year there's 1 or 2. My best guesses would be Justin Anderson again. You know, when the Mad Ants were leaking in for their kind of first practice, I saw him talking with Rick Carlisle for a while. They have a ton of experience together. Servitas, who of course played with the team in training camp and preseason, or Kigab, who they just drafted. Their season starts again on November 5th in 1.5 weeks. I'm looking forward to it, and we'll of course keep you up to date with the Mad Ants as much as feasibly possible here on the Locked On Pacers podcast, because I still consider them an extension of the Pacers, and a valuable one at that. They've developed some talent that has become valuable for the actual NBA Pacers squad very recently. It's not that hard to find guys like O'Shea Brissett, who had successful seasons down there, like Terry Taylor, who had successful seasons down there, right? It's very obvious how valuable that can be for development of players and talent. Edmund Sumner, Alex Poitras, to name a few more. So keep up with the Mad Ants if you can, because I think that those guys can be, especially the best players, important to the actual Pacers. Tomorrow, breaking down Pacers Bulls, what happened. We'll do a sidebar, whatever you want to call it, a second story of another player from that game like we did with TJ McConnell against the Sixers. And another story perhaps on, or another segment, perhaps on injury updates. Miles Turner's questionable. Daniel Tice, I want to get a little more clarity on his knee. Keep you guys updated on everything going on with the team. Friday, previewing the weekend coming for the Pacers, an ESPN game. The Nets twice, who have Sumner and TJ Warren. Lots of fun coming here on the Locked On Pacers podcast. You won't want to miss it. So thank you guys a ton for listening. Have a great day. We will see you tomorrow.